Rule, not the exception. I think it's the time for this planet to engage the rest of the universe.
So we saw one star moving very slowly. Let's all think like telepathically. Think of it, stop it. Well, this little ball of light, it actually stopped.
I saw 3 what everybody considers now grays walk into my parents' room and stand at the foot of the bed.
Unless some kind of literally undeniable, in-your-face kind of event took place, I don't see that changing. I think it's the people who have to get more involved. That's what has to happen.
She saw it as a normal-sized praying mantis. This thing was the size of a person.
The world is coming to an end that night.
And then it shot in 3 different directions and disappeared. That was the granddaddy of them all, that meteor. I said, that wasn't a meteor.
And I carry my digital camera always on me no matter where I go.
When my mother verified that he was dead, the very first thing that popped into my head was they took him again, but they left his body this time.
Pennsylvania resident Tom Ham has witnessed multiple UFO sightings throughout his life. His first sighting occurred while vacationing in the small coastal town of Strathmere, New Jersey in 1993.
We're watching the Perseid meteor shower. And we had this place, we rented it for about 10 years, so we would go out there and watch them. It was pretty cool. So me and a friend, his girlfriend went to get a pizza, and we're continuing watching, we're oohing and ahhing. And then there was a little lack of activity. So during that lull, I'm looking, and there's this one star. Now we're looking at the ocean. It's really dark, but down south this star was, like towards Cape May. And I'm looking at it. I don't even know why, but all of a sudden that star went zip, 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 and I went, "What the heck is that? Stars don't do that." Well, it came right up the beach. Wherever or however far south it was, it came right up the beach until it was actually on top of us. As we're watching it and I guess processing what the hell we're looking at, it was amazing because it was one solid white light. And then all of a sudden it was like rotating around each other, but there was 3. One was white, one was blue, one was green. And they kind of rotated around each other. And every hair in my body was standing straight out like electricity, like when you rub a balloon on yourself. My arm hair was sticking out, his head hair was sticking out, my head hair was sticking out. It was all the static electricity, and we were underneath the thing. And that's when I said, "Oh my God, do you realize what we're looking at?" And I could still see his face today. He was like this. But then we watched it, and it went all the way till over the Atlantic City skyline at night. And then it shot in 3 different directions and disappeared. And he started yelling, "That was the granddaddy of them all, that meteor." I said, "That wasn't a meteor."
2 years later, Tom would return to that very same vacation home, this time accompanied by his father, a devout Christian and pastor of his church. As Tom spoke to his father about the strange object he witnessed, both men would have no idea what was soon to transpire.
I said, "Well, we were standing right here, Dad, and looking up, and we seen one way down here," and I went, "Oh my God, there's another one." At that exact moment, there was another one coming in from the ocean, from east to west. And I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening." So I'm watching it, and this one was flying slow, and it was a saucer, and it was wobbling. They tend to wobble when they fly slow. So it was like a pendulum swinging, but on a straight line. So here it comes, coming off the ocean. We watched it come all the way in. And it's going like this, on a straight line. And now I realize what I'm looking at. And now I want to look at my father. And I says, "Dad, what is that?" He says, "That's a helicopter." I said, "Take a good look, Dad." And he's looking. And he goes, what the hell is that thing? That's not making any noise. And I watched his whole expression change as he processed what he was looking at. I wanted to see that, and I did. Now, it was the color of a dirty nickel. Picture an old nickel, dull, okay? But when it swung the other way, it reflected the sun and it flashed our eyes because we both went like this, like a windshield from the sun. Same exact thing. But as it got right over the house next door, my father grabbed me by the arm and he says, "We were supposed to see this." He went back to his church and he talked about this experience. And they kind of shushed him off.
Despite the church's dismissive reaction to his father's testimony, the two men are adamant about what they saw. And in 2008, the Vatican released a statement that, for many, is in preparation of an eminent disclosure of their knowledge of the existence of extraterrestrials here on Earth, stating that believing the universe may contain alien life does not contradict a faith in God. For Tom Ham, his ongoing experiences led him to the CE5 initiative, an extraterrestrial research and study group led by renowned ufologist Dr. Stephen M. Greer. And it was in the Mojave Desert, while en route to Dr. Greer's location, that Tom would have one of his most profound experiences so far.
And there's 4 of us in this Jeep. An astronaut was driving, who I won't mention his name. And me and a coworker were in the back. I was behind the driver's seat. And it's pitch black in the desert. I mean, and we got lost. As we're finding our way back to the original road we came off of, I'm looking out the side view mirror. And this shooting star comes across like on an arch, not straight, not down, sideways, but like an arch. The driver's driving, he didn't see it. The guy next to me, he didn't see it because of the roof of the car. And I don't know why the guy on the front passenger seat didn't see it, but nobody seen it but me. And then it disappeared. Well, it wasn't over. The best was yet to come. Because just where it disappeared, all of a sudden, whoosh, this thing materialized, and it was big. I'm saying it's as big as a locomotive standing on end, maybe 2 of them. The shape of a 55-gallon drums with no ribs, straight up and down cylinder, with a gumball on top of it, the same circumference. And all this steam was coming off of it, but it was weird, the steams. It's hard to describe some of these things because you're trying to use language from something that's not from this planet. So it looked like plasma or something coming off of it. And, you know, from experience and from reading, I didn't want to take my eyes off of it because I figured if I blink, it's going to disappear, and I wanted to watch this thing, and I was ready to watch this thing. I had to look to the right side of the thing, of the craft. It seemed like the left side was real bright, and to this day I wonder if there was a beam in my eye. I don't know. I can't answer that. But I had to look to the right side because it was so bright. Okay, and I don't know why I could look at the right side, not the left side. And I'm screaming in the back seat, "Look at that, look at that, you guys seeing this?" Nobody sees it but me. I'm the only one in the car. And then the most amazing thing happened. This thing started disappearing digitally. A chunk here, a chunk here, a chunk here, a chunk here.
Like pixelated.
Yeah, until all the chunks got to the middle and this little black hole and it disappeared. But I knew it was still there. It was still there, but I couldn't see it anymore. Just the steam was still floating down in the air. And then, again, just like a slinky going down the steps, that motion, it did the same thing, kind of like backwards, and the whole desert floor lit up white. And then gone. I was told later by a psychic that they didn't see it because they weren't ready to see it.
Can extraterrestrials be capable of affecting our perceptions? Manipulating our minds so that we can only see what they want us to see? Or perhaps aliens are coordinating a highly advanced method of opening themselves to us by utilizing our untapped psychic abilities. Such theories have been researched in the meditative practices by which Tom Ham participated during Dr. Greer's CE-5 expedition in the Mojave Desert, which yielded promising results.
During the latter part of the week that I stayed there and did the expedition with him, on a Wednesday night they started seeing ETs outside our meditation circle. And they were trying to teach us to train our eyes on how to view them, okay, and pick them up easier, you know. And I was getting frustrated because even though what I seen already that week, I wasn't seeing them, and I got a little frustrated with it, you know. And there's always that room for doubt, all right, even though I seen what I seen already. Well, lo and behold, the next night, the same thing happened, and that's when I seen one. He was about between 4.5 and 5.5 feet tall. I knew it was a male. I could see right through him, just like a ghost. He walked right in front of me, about 10, 15 feet away. And I said, oh, here's a tall one right there. And I was standing next to Jan Bravo at the time, which is one of Greer's people. And I said, oh my God, he's just like a ghost. You could see right through him. And she said, yes, yes.
As the interview concluded, Tom sketched for the filmmakers the craft he saw in the desert that night.
It was pretty much like that, with a ball on top. But it was big. It was big. And when it disappeared, it would, like, a chunk here would disappear, and a chunk here would disappear, and a chunk here, until there was nothing. Until it went right into the middle. A black dot in the middle. It just folded into that black dot, chunk at a time. It was amazing.
I was in the military base with my father. We moved there in 1964. I was 8 years old. 2 years later, I remembered it was in the summertime. And what happened was I was outside, and I like to stare at the stars because I like to do astronomy when I was a little kid. And I was looking across the street between the two houses. Behind the two houses was a playground. And I saw circular lights, it was reddish lights, just spin around in a circle like this. And it was round. And it was about, I say, from where I was, I could tell it was about 4 or 5 feet from the ground. It wasn't making a sound. It wasn't disturbing the ground or nothing. So I was just observing it and watching it. And then it just slowly started just like shifting slowly on the playground area. That was my first experience. Maybe about a week later, it was still summertime, I was outside, and I was just looking around again because I was paranoid now from seeing the UFO. And I looked over to the right, and across the street, we call it Grandpappy Mountain. There's a big gully, a big ditch, huge ditch. So as I'm looking across there, there's a red glowing ball, an orb or something, just real slowly going across the top of the tree lines. No sound again. I didn't see any other lights, like you see the airplanes, little lights flickering around the side. No, it was just a ball of red going across, and they would stop and then move again. Then it dipped down into the gully, so you didn't see it no more. That was my second experience seeing it. I didn't tell my parents this time because I figured by the time we get there, they won't see it again. I say about a month later, we were all outside, all my friends. So we were going to lay on the grass, look straight up into the sky, and look for satellites. And so we saw one star moving very slowly. So we're staring at it. And just for the fun, I just said out loud, I said, let's all think like telepathically and think, everybody say the same thing. Think of it, stop it. So we all laid down there, we were all thinking, stop. Well, this little ball of light Look, because it was about the size of a satellite when it goes across the sky. It actually stopped. And we all were amazed. And he said, let's try something else. Let's make it go to the left or to the right or whatever. So we decided we'd make it go to the right. So we did that a few times and thought about it. It started going to the right. And then we said, man, this is cruel. So we said, let's make it go different directions. So he said, let's back it up. We could go reverse. So then it was going backwards. Then I said, well, how about we just said, come down closer. So after a minute or two, it started coming down slow. You can see it's getting bigger and bigger. It's coming down faster and slower, or like getting bigger. So that's when it freaked us all out. And we ran to the house, told our parents. They came out, wasn't there.
As the son of a military officer, Frank Mully and his family frequently moved from base to base, never settling for too long in one location. But that did not stop the mysterious UFOs from finding him.
When in my early teens, late teens, I got my Mustang, my first Mustang, T-roof convertible. Visited Debbie, my wife now, but we were dating. Went to her house, and after the date was over, I drove back home. This is in October. It was crisp, cool air. I mean, a lot of stars. Got out of the car, walking up the hill to my parents' house, and you get that feeling that somebody was staring at you, and the back of your hair would stand up. And usually you think if somebody's staring at you, they're around you. But something said to me in my head, look up. That's when I looked up and I saw this star. But it wasn't twinkling like a star, it looked like a planet. But it would shift a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. So it's okay, it's not a planet. And all of a sudden, as I was staring at it, a tiny little wet white dot came out of it, came out real slowly. And then as I saw it come out, I stopped, and I just took off real fast. So I just followed it like that, followed it, so I couldn't see it no more. So I looked back towards the other area, I guess the mothership, wasn't there. That freaked me out. So that time, I ran to the house, told my dad about it. He came outside, but I figured by the time I saw it wasn't there no more, it wouldn't be there. And he came out and he looked in the sky. I told him I saw the UFO, and he sort of like, you know, like parents are, they figure your imagination. You kid with you, stuff like that. And that was that. Driving my Mustang again. I was on Fairview Street, going back 25 miles an hour, that's the speed limit. And my T-roof off. I'm driving, and I was looking at the trees, and you drive by, you see the green trees, you look up, you see your convertible. And I look to the right on a 45-degree angle, 2 black triangles. So it'd be one to be here, and one would be right behind it, right about here. Wasn't making a sound, but it was. I could figure it was going the same speed as me because it was staying with me. I was going 25 miles an hour. So I spun around real quick, came to the house, got my camera, and got back in the car. Went back to the same location. Wasn't there no more. So I figured, okay, if it's going 25 miles an hour, it's probably further up the road. So I like went a little faster than the speed limit because I was trying to catch up with it. But we can get a ticket. And went all the way up to 130 at the end. It wasn't there no more. But there were no markings on it. There was no lights on it. Pitch black. It wasn't, you know, wasn't shiny or it wasn't glowing. It wasn't whatever, because I guess it was daylight. But I think it was about 200. I'd say maybe 200, 300 feet above the ground.
I know I was 6 years old. I have to go into a little bit of my parents' background. At the time, They didn't have a checking account. They paid everything. They had a little metal can and top dresser in their bedroom, and they had it separated: utilities, phone bill, whatever. This was in the top dresser drawer in my parents' bedroom. And a lot of times I would get up after they fell asleep. I'd get up, go in the bedroom, crawl in between the two of them and sleep in their bed with them. So I remember one night falling asleep and hearing a knock on the front door. I sat up in bed and my mother said, "I hate it when they come this time of night." And I looked over at the dresser, and it was an illuminated clock dial, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. She goes to this dresser drawer and pulls money out of this little can and leaves the room, goes through the living room into a sun porch to the front door. About a minute or two later, she comes back. She gets back in bed, and I lay down. I'm wide awake thinking, who comes at 2 o'clock in the morning? My mother falls right back to sleep. Within minutes after that, I hear a rustling noise in the living room, and it scared me. I thought somebody was breaking in the house. So I'm lying there perfectly still. Now, I don't know whether I couldn't move or I was just so frightened I didn't, but I closed my eyes partially because I wanted whoever was coming in to think that I was asleep, but I left them open a slit. Well, the next thing I knew, I saw 3 what everybody considers now grays walk into my parents' room and stand at the foot of the bed. I saw one gray go to my mother's ankles and the other one go near her shoulder blades, and it seemed like they had put their fingers underneath of her, and she levitated up off the bed. They then proceeded to take her out, and it was almost as if an invisible gurney was underneath of her, and she floated. And what I want to say about floating is I didn't notice when they left the room that there was a cadence in their walk at all. There was no bounce. It was like she was glided out. So of course I'm laying there perfectly still thinking, if they think I'm asleep, they won't bother me. The next thing I know, a few minutes later, they come in and do the same thing with my father. Nobody woke up. I lie there perfectly still. Next thing I knew, I wake up, the sun's coming in the window, I hear birds, my mom's out in the kitchen fussing around out there, my dad's somewhere in the house. Perfectly bright morning, and I thought, okay, it had to be a dream. So I got up, I remember eating breakfast, and I remember the entire day looking between my 2 parents to see if there was some unspoken communication going on, that something had taken place. Nothing. We weren't the type of family to be overly sharing, talking about our feelings or anything. So I never brought it up. Never mentioned it to them. They've both passed away at this point. So there was never anything said. As far as I knew, it was a dream, and I guess that's where I relegated it in my brain to kind of deal with it. So we fast forward, I go to a UFO conference, and one of the speakers was Bud Hopkins, who was a well-known UFO researcher, and he did regressions on people that have claimed to have abduction experiences. And as I said, I don't have any memory of actually being taken the way I saw my parents taken. But during the lunch break, I sat down and spoke to him and started telling him about what happened. As I'm telling him, I literally started shaking as if I was re-experiencing it, because even to this day, it's so vivid that it's like it happened last night. So I was saying, I think maybe it was a dream, and he said, well, I can tell you that whatever part of our brain is working while we're in a dream state is incapable of telling time. So that really hit me hard, because I know I looked at that clock and it was 2 o'clock in the morning when the bill collectors supposedly came to the door. So as I'm speaking to him, I'm also getting almost like flashes of memory. Next to my father's side of the bed in that bedroom was a window that he had closed up because it led to that front sun porch that was unheated. On the other side of that closed window on the sun porch were graduation pictures of my sisters. As I'm speaking to Bud Hopkins, I can feel being pulled off the end of the bed so that my pajamas actually rolled up and floating in the air, going through that wall where the pictures are. And I can't even describe the sensation that I felt when I was speaking to him, because it was as if I'm a solid human being, and as a solid wall, I went through it, but I could feel a resistance as if the molecules in my body were meshing with the wall. I could feel myself go through the wood, and I could feel myself go through these pictures on the other side of it. And the only other thing I remember from when I was speaking with him was hovering over my driveway in the dark and looking through the tree across the street and seeing a bright light, but it was the leaves were kind of blowing a little bit in the breeze, so it looked as if it was twinkling. And that was the last memory I have of that.
Debbie Minaccio shared her encounter with UFO abductee Travis Walton, whose own story inspired the motion picture Fire in the Sky. Travis recommended that she contact researcher Leo Sprinkle for a session of hypnotic regression.
I called his phone number and left a message. Told him when I was planning there and if I could sit down and talk to him. About 20 minutes later, he calls me back and he scheduled an appointment with me. And I got to speak with him for the whole half a day on one of the days I was visiting my sister, and he actually did a regression.
Notice what happened. When you're ready, you can talk and describe your impressions as they unfold. What's happening now?
I'm afraid they're gonna hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
If I pretend I'm asleep, maybe they'll go away.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being led down a hallway, and I guess what was a craft. Everything was very dimly lit, and here were these two grays taking me down a hall. And I remember looking off to the side and seeing my mother lying on a table and getting frightened, and them communicating to me, she's okay.
They both put their arms around my shoulder, so I'm in between, almost like comforting. Like, it's okay. I don't hear them say anything.
They took me to another room, and this room was rounded, so I'm assuming it's the interior of a craft, and that was just the shape of it. But it had like a yellowish green lighting, and there was a strip that ran around the top of the room that had like recessed lighting that you really couldn't see. The entire room were all plants, hydroponically growing, and they said to me, this is what you're going to do. And that's all I remember, other than being left in my driveway shivering and somehow going back in the house and then waking up. I don't remember seeing, touching the surfaces. Everything was like the gunmetal gray, but matte, like not shiny. And like I said, this one room had all plants. There was another room that, of course I got upset. I saw my mother lying on just a flat table with a sheet over her. But there was another room that they let me go into, and it had a panel with lights and buttons and everything. And they just walked me over to it. And there was one that had a red light that was on. And they just said, don't ever touch this. And that's all I remember of that. These other memories that came in kind of came in bits and pieces. I do know that ever since I can remember, I grow everything you can imagine. I save the seeds of everything I eat. I've grown nectarines. I have a 10-foot avocado tree in my office at work. So I'm constantly growing things and pollinating things, and I'm always working with plants. How that relates to what they showed me, I don't know, because I don't see myself changing the world. I didn't have visions of a lot of people, you know, terrible, like, invasive procedures or reproductive experimentation or seeing babies or being shown the world's going to end. I never had any of that. I just had this image projected into me. And when I say they communicated to me, I never saw them speak. It was all like done through telepathically or something. And I don't remember, you know, they seemed to be comforting to me. They wanted to assure me that my mother was okay and that I was safe. That's the impression I got. I didn't have fear. The most fear I had was when they came in the room and levitated my parents out of there. From that point on, that night, from the time I was 6 until I was about 13, I would have profuse nosebleeds. 3-4 times a month. I mean, pillow soaked, that type of thing. So that was really bizarre. When I was 30 years old, my husband and my 3 kids, we moved to Florida. And my son at the time was 8 years old. And I remember Whitley Strieber's book coming out, being in a bookstore to go get a book. And I'm telling you, when I saw that book, the blood drained from my face and my jaw probably hit the floor, because that's exactly, the cover of that book is exactly what I saw that night.
Although her life has forever been altered by her childhood encounter with aliens, it is possible that the visitations never stopped for Debbie.
I remember on several occasions waking up during the night and wanting to go sleep on the couch in the front room under the picture window. And on these nights, I remember waking up, standing, looking out the window, and a bright spotlight hitting me in the face that was just blinding. And then next thing I knew, it was morning again. So I didn't mention it to anybody, you know, I just thought it was some weird type of dream or something. And I guess a few months later, my son said, I had the strangest dream last night. I woke up in my room and stood looking out my front window, and this bright, glaring light was in my eyes. And I told him at that point that the same thing had happened to me, and we were able to pinpoint that it happened on the same night.
As we begin to see a pattern of what appears to be a strong psychic connection shared among UFO eyewitnesses and abductees, we must ask ourselves, who is making contact with us, and why? Is it to control our thoughts, our memories, our innermost fears in an attempt to manipulate the balance of power? Some believe such sinister motives are already in effect. But what of the witnesses who claim to have had pleasant encounters, almost euphoric, with positive messages such as Debbie Menaccio's experience? And there are others who have had encounters so profound that the event itself has changed one's entire life path to take a more positive direction. Such is the case of Devin, who can only describe her sighting as an amazing and brilliant light that illuminated her most darkest time.
In 2012, and I'm on my way home, and it's back country road here in South Jersey, and there's not like a city like at all. It's very like farmlands and things like that. Maybe you may see a house every 2 or 3 miles at this point. And I'm listening to this one particular song that I like, you know, just a song, and I keep thinking that out of my peripheral vision, I'm seeing something to the left of me as I'm driving. But like I told you, back in my childhood, I reverted back to that fear. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I knew that there was something there to the left blinking, but I wouldn't look at it. because my mind is, please God, don't let me see it. I don't want to see it if it's there.
Perhaps instinctively aware of being ignored by Devon as she continues driving, the strange craft incorporates an elaborate new method of communicating with her, only not through telepathy, but rather through the song on her radio.
It says, some of the lyrics say, do you hear me now? Do you see me now? And I just decided to look, and I'm like, and so I look, and it was amazing looking. It was just like, it took your breath away. It was a vehicle made out of just light that I could tell, or something that I've never seen to be able to explain. A pulsating, circular, really beautiful red and orange light that would interchange and go around and do all these things, rotation. And I stopped my car. It was so beautiful. It resonated with me in such a way that I wasn't scared of it like I had always been. Like, please God, don't let me see this, to, I'm not, this is so beautiful. How can you be scared of this? Making no sound. And then it was just really bright to me. But it wasn't like radiating or reflecting light off the ground or trees or anything. So it wasn't shining down. There was no spotlight that came down. And I just remembered thinking, don't leave me here. Take me, I hate it here. I was thinking maybe, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm thinking maybe they're here to rescue me from this, whatever I was in. Then I verbally out loud say to it, don't leave me here. I don't leave me. I don't want to stay here. Please. Why are you leaving me here? And I'm crying and screaming. And then I get back in my car because I'm out on an old country road in South Jersey, screaming in the middle of the sky, to the sky, don't leave me here. Get in my car, and the song is saying, shut up, you wanted me. Shut up, you needed me. Shut up, you wanted me. Shut up, you do. Then I'm just beginning to think like the world is coming to an end that night. Maybe this is, maybe this is the Antichrist that's coming. Maybe it's the Messiah. Maybe it's, but I knew something that night, especially after that experience, that something was coming to a head.
From this encounter, Devon feels validated that she was not alone in the darkest time of her life. Though she still questions as to why this happened and what it all means, she is certain that it was a wake-up call of cosmic proportions.
I just know the experience was, it's inconceivable to think to myself that all that happened, and it was also coincidental for nothing, It just had to be for something, because look at the outcome. The outcome is that I was, I was broken spiritually, and now, I'm still a seeker, but at least I'm seeking something. I have a purpose for life.
These are the testimonies of various eyewitnesses, strangers, who share a common thread and certainty that we are being visited by beings from other worlds. But there are still many of us who have yet to have such an encounter.
Do you feel selected at all, or singled out that you got to see these experiences?
I never thought of it that way. It's like, well, I think that other people see them, but at those particular times, I was always by myself. Why was I out there by myself? I was the only one that saw it at the time, and there's no reaction from the military base.
Now you're exposed to this ability to see these things? It's hard to answer. I understand. I question myself, why me? Mm-hmm. Why not me, but why me? It's like, what's my connection to this? How far does it go back? There's more questions than answers I have about that. we're playing, like I said, we're in first grade. It wasn't kindergarten. And here, it was just before lunch, I remember this. And my teacher was talking to these two guys in suits by the door. And as I looked over, there was a picture of the moon that I don't know where it came from. All of a sudden it was there on the wall inside the door next to the blackboard. And I ran over to the picture of the moon. And I'd never seen a picture of the moon like this before in my life. But I'm young now, so my references were limited. But it stood out to me. And I was the only kid in that class that was grabbed by that picture. I know that. I remember that. And I was standing there looking at that picture of the moon. I don't know who them people were. And as I'm looking at the moon, there's craters the same size next to each other all over. Like two small ones, and then two big ones, and then two medium-sized ones, but two. So this little blonde-haired kid was looking at it. All of a sudden he goes, two, 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 two. I notice a pattern. And I says I look over to these people standing there, which I don't know who they are, and I said to them, meteors don't land in twos. And then I went skipping off to lunch. And I came back, and I ran right over to the picture again, and it was gone. I'd never seen a picture like that again. But I never thought about it again until I started reading about all these structures on other the Mars and the moon, and then I had that flash of memory. It was like, wow. It was a wow moment for me,
My son, who was very scientifically minded, where he went to school, they had a separate little area where the kindergartners would go out after lunch, and they were kept separate from the other older kids. And it was right by the back door of the school, and they had a bench back there. So he said that they all lined up to go back in, and he happened to look over at the bench and just stood there frozen. And his teacher, he was the last one coming in, his teacher actually had to come out and say, come on, it's time to come in. And he just kind of pointed at the bench, and the teacher said, yes, Paul, that's a praying mantis. They're endangered. And he said, but Mom, it was the size you are. She saw it as a normal-sized praying mantis. This thing was the size of a person.
For many of us who have never encountered extraordinary events in our life, it is difficult to grasp these claims. But for those who have, these memories are very real. In fact, many experiencers themselves are uncertain whether their memories are combinations of true memories or dreams mixed together. If so, then perhaps these claims are easier to dismiss. But what of the so-called dreams experiencers have that are eerily similar to those others experience? Or even more startling, dreams of events that have yet to happen.
I got somebody to change an appointment because I saw him dying at a very specific road, an accident, and I called him at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I said, are you going such and such a place down this road that I described Wednesday? And he said, yes. Told him the time of day because I could see the sun through the trees. He said, I'm going to humor you and change this appointment. Took me very seriously. So he changed it for 2 weeks later. And when he drove there, his brakes failed. Went through the intersection, totaled his car, but wasn't hurt.
When I was younger, I think it was like 10 years, it came true. I dreamt of a street that curved. It was in Willingboro, and it curved. And in the curve, there's these houses and these tall power line towers, which you don't have in North Carolina, but they do up here. And I saw that, and I was walking with my brothers and my sisters, and we were walking to school. You know, it was cold, it was September, I remember all that. And when Dad got out of the service, we moved to Willingboro, and we went to school. And as we were walking to school, we ran around this curve, saw the whole thing, the tower, the trees, the whole thing. And I dreamt that, and I was like 10 years into the future, and I dreamt that, and I walked there, and it was like deja vu.
At one point, I'm trying to go to sleep, and this is, I guess I'm in my early 40s, and I hear, it sounded like two air traffic controllers speaking back and forth to one another. And they gave a flight number and everything, and the plane crashed the next day. It was a United flight, I can't remember now the number, but the next day that plane crashed. So I actually heard a conversation between two air traffic controllers or pilot or something, but you could tell that it was something to do with the airline, and I mentally made note of it at the time, that this was going on. And that's happened sporadically. I'm in between, not a deep sleep, but I'm not, fully asleep. It's in that place where I was a little restless, and the strangest thing happened. My father appeared to me. He was all gold and white. First I seen his whole body, and then I just seen from here up, and he went like this. He put his hand out to me, and I went like this. It was amazing. And I'm telling you, tears rolled down my cheeks for like 3 hours after that.
Are there more to these encounters than we are made to understand?
I would have these dreams that I'd be flying through the clouds, and I loved it. I was soaring, and when I would get waken up, I wanted to go back to sleep to go back and fly, and I could actually feel my body pop out, not knowing what I was dealing with, or I was grappling more with the experience than what was happening. Okay, I knew I liked it. It was awesome. And then after I read Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine, and she described astral projection, I went, oh my God, that's what happened with me when I was a teenager.
I couldn't wait to have these dreams when I had, because they are so cool. I mean, it's literally, it sounds rather silly, but it's literally like I could flap. I suppose my arms would be wings, and I could flap and just elevate, whenever I, as per my, whatever desires, and go up, and then I could also soar around.
While interviewing Devon, we found her story so similar to that of Tom Ham's dreams of astral projection that we decided to share his story with her to see her reaction.
I would have these dreams that I'd be flying through the clouds, and I loved it. I was soaring, and when I would get waken up, I wanted to go back to sleep to go back and fly, And
yes,
I actually feel my body pop out, not knowing what I was dealing with, or I was grappling more with the experience than what was happening. Okay, I knew I liked it. It was awesome. And then after I read Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine, and she described astral projection, I went, oh my God, that's what happened with me when I was a teenager.
I've actually never really put too much thought into that dream, because, I mean, afterwards I just remember how much I enjoyed it, but I never really put any thought into maybe exploring, The only exploration I did was more like the, like the Native American style Cherokee Indian answer for that you resonate with a certain, animal. Mm-hmm. And I just always just assumed, the raven, or probably more so the owl, is mine.
I just don't see the coincidence there. There could have been a million things you could have answered, but you decide that's something that is you want to talk about dreams. I fly. That's amazing. And as you were talking, I'm remembering Tom's interview verbatim, saying, oh yeah, I used to have these dreams. I'm flying and I'm just enjoying it, and I'm upset when I wake up, but I'm having such a great time.
Yeah.
For the making of this program, we met with only a small group of people, strangers to one another, and yet all sharing psychic abilities in some form or another. But why? And what single factor is it that they all share in common?
I don't tote myself as a psychic, but I know it was at that point that it started.
I was able to move things with my mind. Clairvoyance, precognition. My brother from England came over, and we were at the mall. And he was hiding from me, like hide and seek type of thing. And I knew he ducked under this long piece of bread at the bread shop at the mall. So I knew he ducked down because I saw the top of his hair. So I focused on the bread, and I said, roll over, like just roll, so land on him. So I was focusing on it, and all of a sudden it just went, and it fell him, and he got up and he goes, what just happened?
With so many reports of alien contact throughout the world, one can only wonder, who are these mysterious visitors? Where do they come from? And more importantly, what do they want?
Where do I think they come from? Well, what I've learned, or what I think I've learned, is, life in the universe is the rule, not the exception. And now we're becoming part of the universe. I think it's the time for this planet to engage the rest of the universe. I've heard it being called lifting of the veil. The veil's being lifted, and we're getting conscious to other things in the universe.
There's so many theories out there. I honestly think, and this is just, my viewpoint, I think that they're us in the future. I think that's, there's a certain humanoid perspective to them. They have a body and eyes, and what if we do something so devastating to this planet that we're forced to go underground or to leave it and go to another planet where we're living underground, and because the sunlight or the ultraviolet rays are so harmful that our eyes become bigger, we become paler. Of course, technology now, people are not as muscular. So you can see in the future, if you're using a lot of technology and not using your muscle mass that we did, 100 years ago, you're going to become spindly and things are going to atrophy. So maybe they've learned how to travel back in time to fix something that we've done terribly wrong to this planet, or to civilization, or to beings, and they're looking for cures, or they're looking for history, or whatever they're looking for. But I really think that they may be our descendants somehow.
I actually have two. One, I would think that they're, like say they come from another planet, another world. And then the other part of me says that they've been here. It's like their world. And we're the visitors type of thing. Like we're the shortcomers and they're the longcomers. Like they've been here longer than us. And so it's like two feelings that I'm having with that.
I think that I would say the odds are best that another planet, another moon, somewhere in our galaxy. Somehow they have the technology where they can bridge those long distances, light-year distances, and they can get here in a reasonable amount of time for them and look around, poke around, do their research, and head on back. I think that's the case. There are some other theories that are out there. Time travel, perhaps, us from the future, multi-dimensional, multiverse beings. I have some reasons why I don't think that's as likely. With time travel, for example, if it's us from the future, one thing that I don't think that any technology and even humanity will ever be able to do is control the entire movement of the universe, the galaxy. We rotate around the center of the galaxy. So even if you wanted to go 6 months into the future, Earth wouldn't be here. Earth would be 186 million miles away on the other side of the sun. So if you're traveling any significant distance in time, you've got to travel a significant